like when you hear lifters say like, or like everything just kind of clicks together and like they just know they're gonna like land the lift? Is that
Yeah.
kind of what's going on there?
Yeah. So, I mean, you guys are both familiar with the concept of flow. I know we've probably talked about this before, but essentially the idea of flow is like, so we talk about, I'm going to try to bridge it all together. When we talk about like teaching something, we want to have a very high level of sensory awareness because that's how we get this like the sensory feedback to change our positions. Versus when we're doing something at the highest possible level, pretend we're about to perform like a world record lift or a personal best lift. If I'm thinking about what my feet are going to do during a movement, I'm probably going to mess it up. If I'm thinking about, oh, what do my elbows need to do? Or what does my shoulder need to do? Or what does my back need to do? If I'm thinking about these small little minute points when I'm performing at a high level, I'm going to mess it up. The highest level of performance occurs in this like idea of a flow state because it's actually where your neocortex or your thinking part of your brain actually goes really silent. So what it does is those deeper brain centers where kind of our habits and our long entrenched motor patterns are stored, that kicks in and kind of is amplified under these like circumstances of flow. So our goal during the teaching phase is highlight like this idea of like conscious incompetence of getting somebody aware that they're not good at something and having them do it repeatedly at lower intensities, and then slowly work it all the way to the point of unconscious competence, which is essentially where they're doing something at a very high level with good proficiency, but they're not thinking about it. So as coaches, that's what we're trying to do with everyone. It doesn't matter if you're working with a football player. It doesn't matter if you're working with a baseball player, if you're working with a weightlifter, or even a recreational athlete who just wants to run. Our goal is to early on front load the teaching side of things so that later on we focus more on the performance side and just allow them to use all those good repetitions to kind of have like, that's their go-to strategy now. If that becomes their go-to strategy, their odds of success are going to be a lot higher because they've had more good repetitions within that same framework. And there's going to be a little bit of variability between them, but they have more options.
What you're talking about.
Yeah,
That's
like,
cool. So a lot of that is like if you can get them into a rhythm of doing something, you know, if it's a split squat, you know, you keep them in that rhythm, they're kind of getting into that flow. So a lot of times I'll use a metronome to try to get them into a rhythm. So just doing it and things like that, and that's when you see records broken, like you said, you know, or you know whatever it is, or best performance, or you know, well, I've never done better. Well, you got in the flow.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, like how many times have you used like set timed rest periods so that you're forcing people to do kind of repetitions without thinking about it? It's the same thing of doing like, all right, every 60 seconds you're gonna do a clean and jerk, and we're gonna do that until either form breaks down or until you don't feel comfortable with it. So it's like, all right, now you're building up repetitions and they're forced to not think about it because they're thinking about other things. They're getting tired. They're kind of getting into that flow state. But as coaches, we just find different ways to do that, right? Like there's a million ways we can modify the same activity to kind of change the focus or change the emphasis.
Yep.
So Mike, as a coach, how are you, better way to word this. So to get to a flow state, there's got to be some level of learning that occurs to be able to get to an unconscious competent state where you can just kind of do things. So how in your coaching are you implementing ways to get people to learn things and potentially struggle to get to that point of conscious incompetence to unconscious competence?
I mean, just like everything, it's a continuum, right? So early on, I'm not expecting a whole lot of flow states in the early phases, just because there's so much cognitive load and cognitive effort early on in training that it's very hard to make it feel like flow. But I will say one way that you can kind of enhance the odds of that happening is doing some sort of like cyclical or repetitive movement early on. So like maybe after their workout, they're doing some like bike interval stuff, or they're doing something where they can do with very good competence or just very good capabilities, and have them do it repeatedly. So like say they've like mastered like kettlebell squats or something like that. Maybe you have them start doing workouts where they're doing like EMOMs, like every minute on the minute. All right, you can do 10 really good squats on the beginning of the minute. You can do that for 10 minutes. So now what we're doing is we're layering in this like cyclical activity that they're already doing very well, and we're making them less cognitively aware of what they're doing, right? We get to the point where fatigue sets in. Once fatigue sets in, we can't be as much neocortex. Like we can't focus as much on the activity. We just have to push to get through it. So it's almost like one of the best ways I think to integrate a little bit of flow early on is doing something under fatigue. Like doing something under fatigue that's not risky. It's something more repetitive, lower intensity, but they can do it a lot, and it forces them to kind of get into the habit or get into that right nook so that they're doing it well. And then as the process progresses, now we start trying to do that at higher intensities. So it's like, all right, maybe we do some like complex work. So say we're talking with a weightlifter. Maybe we have them do sets of 3 of a snatch, but we do it from 3 different positions. So by the last rep, they're already fatigued, but they've done the movement twice, and hopefully they've done it well. So that third rep, even though they're doing it at a lower maximal load, takes a higher level of effort for them to complete it. And in doing so, they can't be overly aware of it. They've got to execute extremely well, and hopefully we have a desirable outcome without doing something that's risky. Because think about how many shots somebody has at like a 80+% lift. Like we can only do so many of those in a training day. Versus if we take like 65 or 70% and we do a whole lot of good reps, the odds of them getting like accessing good repetitions and flow states is much greater. Like Rufus, I know you're a fan of giving somebody an empty bar and having them do a million reps until it looks good, right? Like why do you think that is?
Yeah.
Why do you think that works?
Well, I think it works, and they get into a rhythmic pattern of doing something. So you know how you go down to the position I want you in, and then you do a jump shrug, and then you come back and go down. I try to get them in a pattern of doing it, so it's the same timing all the time. Then all of a sudden you do, now say power clean or whatever we're doing, do a power clean, and all of a sudden they hit it. And this is after I've been trying to teach them, right? And so they hit it. So, okay, let's do it again. So we put the bar down. Okay, now let's do it again. Get back in that rhythm. And I got to get them back in the rhythm. However many it takes me to get them back in the rhythm. Now power clean, bang. And we do the same thing. Well, then you can start adding power cleans. Now instead of 4 jump shrugs, let's do 3 and 2. Two power cleans.